Hi everyone, the partial prophet here. Thanks for tuning in. So I wanted to remind you that we know in part and we prophesy in part, and then when Jesus comes, we will see fully. Okay, so today we're going to talk about the final days of the Messianic birth pangs and the third Passover and the 69th week. Okay, that's what we got for you today. Okay, so can you feel it? Things are nearing a conclusion. We are about to have the greater exodus. So I talked in my previous videos how we are in an exodus pattern, okay, because we're in the second greater exodus, okay. And in Jeremiah 16 we read that, behold, days are coming when we'll no longer talk about the original exodus, but the second greater exodus, which is when the Lord, as the Lord lives, who brought up the sons of Israel from the land of the north and from all the countries where he had banished them. For I will restore them to their own land, which I gave to their fathers. Okay, so that's the second greater exodus. Okay, it's a lot bigger. The first one was just in the country of Egypt. This one is covering the whole world. Okay, God's going to pull out his people out of all the nations, where they have been banished. Okay, and so because we are in this Exodus pattern, we can look to the book of Exodus to see the prophecies that are being fulfilled from the book of Exodus. God's repeating his patterns. He's repeating what he did in the first Exodus with the second Exodus. Okay, and so we just need to have eyes to see how these prophecies are being fulfilled. Okay, so the first thing, first I wanted to talk about Exodus 9:3, because in there, okay, so remember there was the 10 plagues in Egypt. Okay, so in Exodus 9:3, and so we're going to cover kind of the last of the plagues, okay, because that's the day and time that we're in right now. And so in Exodus 9:3, there was a very severe pestilence on the livestock in the field. Okay, so that's the coronavirus. Okay, and so it's interesting that it talks about the pestilence being on the livestock in the field, because if you remember Esau and Jacob, Esau was he would be the one in the field. Okay, and so that would be kind of like God's enemies would be in the field, and then his people would be in the tents, like Jacob. Okay, but then it's interesting because in Exodus 9:4, God says, "But the Lord will make a distinction between the livestock of Israel and the livestock of Egypt, so that nothing will die of all that belongs to the sons of Israel." Okay, and so it's interesting. So if you see that this severe pestilence is the coronavirus, what we can see is that in prophecy, there's a time when God is going to make a distinction, related to the coronavirus between the two groups of people. Okay, between the people that follow him and the people that don't. And so what's interesting is that with this vaccine, we have people that are willing to get the vaccine and see it as a gift from God, which that's what I believe. And then the people that are rebellious against getting the vaccine. I mean, even so much so that there's Christian quote unquote prophets and pastors that are even calling it the mark of the beast. It's not the mark of the beast. The other day I heard, I think it was J.D. Farag who said, was it him? Can't remember who I was listening to, but he talked about how the vaccine was killing people. Okay, the vaccine is not killing people. Okay, the vaccine is saving people. Okay, and don't quote me on that. I'm not sure if it was J.D. Farag who said that. I can't remember who I was listening to the other day. But, yeah, actually, I think it was him. Anyways, that's what they're saying about the vaccine. And like Tucker Carlson apparently is quoting a lot of statistics about the vaccine which are wrong and misleading. So it's been very kind of interesting how we have seen with the vaccine. I mean, it started with the mask. We definitely saw kind of a division between the people that were willing to wear masks and the other people that were rebellious about it. And then it's continued with the vaccine, where we definitely see this very strong distinction between people that are willing to get the vaccine and the people that aren't. Okay. Um, and so, um, okay, so then let's see. So my notes here are, so Jabal is one of the people who dwells in tents and has livestock. And then the livestock are gathered. Okay. So the distinction between the livestock of Israel and the livestock of Egypt, it would be, a picture of these people, like I said, that dwell in tents and then they're gathered, okay, on the day of the Lord, okay. And then, and so then it says there's a distinction between the livestock of Israel and the livestock of Egypt, so that nothing will die of all that belongs to the sons of Israel. So the people that are getting the vaccine are not dying from COVID, which is what's so great about the vaccine. It's that it's protecting them from COVID. Okay. So very interesting prophecy there. And then it moves on to the next plague is the plague of boils. Okay. And so I wrote leprosy. I think the plague of boils is connected to leprosy, but I'm not totally sure. But let's read about it in verse 11. So it's interesting because that would be Exodus 9:11. Okay, so it says, the magicians could not stand before Moses because of the boils, for the boils were on the magicians as well as on all the Egyptians. Okay, so we have this group of people in Egypt that were called the magicians. Okay, and they got these boils. They got this plague of boils. Okay. And so I'm wondering if this is a picture of the false prophets of Trump, because what we had is, these false prophets of Trump were prophesying that Trump was going to win the election, and he didn't. He lost. Okay. And so all of a sudden, God's people started questioning these prophets. And so, so they no longer could stand before God's people, like Moses would be a picture of God's people, because of these boils that were breaking out, which was basically like these false prophets. False prophecies were, all of a sudden, we were seeing that these prophets were not true. So I'm kind of sort of missing, what I was seeing when I first read these verses. But I definitely saw, because of the magicians, that this was a picture of the false prophets. Okay. And so the timing works really well, that we had the coronavirus, the vaccine came, then we had these false prophecies about Trump. Okay, so then in Exodus 9:18, it moves into the plague of hail. Okay, I definitely think the plague of hail is a picture of Israel's war with Hamas. Okay, because remember, the hails are like, it's burning hail. Okay, this plague is described as like thunder, hail, and fire. Okay, and so what's interesting about this plague of hail is that these God calls the Israelites to come in from the field so that they'll be protected from the hail. And so it's interesting because we saw during this war with Hamas is that the Israelis were running into the bomb shelters to protect them from the missiles. Okay. So we see kind of like prophecy there being fulfilled. And so that's what, just the latest prophecy that we've seen fulfilled is with this war with Hamas. And I'll probably mention a few more things about this war, kind of God's purposes for it later. But what's interesting in the Exodus story, it talks about the flax and the barley being ruined, but that it didn't hit the wheat and the spelt, okay? Because the spelt, the wheat and the spelt, are harvested later, okay? And so I really think barley is a picture of the Jewish people, okay, and wheat is a picture of the Christians, okay. So when you talk about flax and barley, flax would be like a picture of the Arabs, or the non-believing Arabs that don't believe in God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And so that's what we saw with this plague of hail, is that we had damage in Gaza and we had damage in Israel, okay. And so it was interesting because it was like talked about it being the harvest season of flax and barley, okay. And then what's interesting is then Pharaoh goes on and says there has been enough of God's thunder and hail, okay. And so that is Biden. That could be a picture of Biden calling for a ceasefire, okay. And so that's basically what happened is then they brought in a ceasefire. So end of the plague of hail, okay. So then it'd be helpful to go and see what happens next in the book of Exodus, to find out what are the prophecies that are about to come true, okay. So then the next plague would be the plague of locusts, okay, and that's in Exodus 10, and so I believe that's a picture of and see, this is where things get a little fuzzy, because we see in part and we prophesy in part. It's a lot easier to look at scriptures after things have happened and see the fulfillment. But here's what I'm thinking with this plague of locusts. What we see is that the locusts are eating the wheat and the spelt. Okay, they're eating what's left over from the flax and the barley. Okay, so they eat the wheat and the spelt. Okay, so like I said, wheat is a picture of the Christians. Okay, so this could be wheat and spelt, could be another way of saying wheat and tares, okay? Because they grow up together, okay? And then I think there's a connection to, we see the bread maker. Okay, so remember that the cupbearer and the baker joined Joseph in jail, okay? And they all both have dreams about the third day, okay. And so one fulfillment about the third day is that I think Obama's presidency was the first day, Trump's presidency was like the second day, and Biden's presidency is like the third day. Because what we saw is that the cupbearer was restored to his office to do what he previously did on the third day. Okay, so that's Biden returning to his office. Okay, so then what we see with the baker is that on the third day, he's got 3 baskets of bread on his head. Okay, so bread would connect to the wheat. And then we see the birds eating the bread out of the 3rd basket. Okay, and then so basically the bread maker gets hung on the 3rd day. And so that's a connection, I think, to the Civil War in America. And so what I believe is that what we're going to see is the militant on the right and the militant on the left are going to go to war with each other, okay? And then God's people, who are the quiet ones, they're not the violent ones, are going to listen to Moses when he says, stand by and see the salvation of the Lord. Okay, so when the Civil War happens, we are the ones that need to be waiting on the Lord to bring his salvation. Okay, see, this is the problem with the people, like the militant on the right. They think they need to, okay, we saw that with the Capitol riot. We saw it very clearly, is that they believe they need to bring an insurrection to establish God's kingdom. Okay, so they think they need to bring war to establish God's kingdom. Okay, which means they believe they have to do the work. Okay, so they're not trusting in God to do the work. Okay, and then we also see that with the militant on the left too, is that they believe that war needs to happen and tear down this country because they hate this country. And that's what they believe needs to happen. And so we see this militant spirit on both sides. Okay. Anyways, and so we see that that's going to happen in this civil war. And so what's interesting was, okay, now this, unless you were really following the news out of Israel, it was hard. You wouldn't have heard this, I think, on mainstream media, because I don't think I ever did. But during the war in Israel, there was actually rioting happening in the cities, okay, of Israel. And so it was almost like civil war was happening in the cities. And it was actually, people were kind of amazed about that, because Israeli Arabs were fighting Israeli Jews. Okay, so people that were normally neighbors were fighting each other, okay, during the war. So, kind of interesting, definitely see, like this militant spirit was released, at the start of this Hamas war, okay, and it kind of crept into the cities too. And so it was interesting that was happening, because I saw it as a foreshadow of what's going to be happening in America. Okay, we're going to see that same kind of militant spirit break out in America, and the civil war is going to start. Okay, so then what's the next plague is the 3 days of darkness, and I'm not totally sure of the timing, but it could be that the civil war in America happens this, like, the plague of locusts maybe happens the same time as the 3 days of darkness, or I don't know, maybe, I'm not really sure, maybe 3 days later or something. Because one thought I had is that if we have civil war in America, is that going to embolden Iran to go, okay, now I can attack Israel, because America's out of the way. Okay, that's a high possibility. Okay, and so if you understand that, Iran wants, they want to eliminate Israel. Okay, because really Iran they want to be in charge of the whole Middle East, basically. Israel is, kind of a blight on the Middle East. Okay, and if you've been following history for a while, Iran, they want to get rid of America and Israel. And so actually what's interesting, if you think about this, if there's civil war in America, they can really use that as propaganda to try to convince the militant terrorists, the militant Muslims, that that their God, Allah, is opening the door for them to take over the Middle East. Okay. So anyways, so that'd be interesting. So so what I believe is that the 3 days of darkness could be a picture of Israel being attacked by Iran, because that door's not closed. Okay, Iran is a big issue. Okay, there's been all these quote unquote peace deals, and even this ceasefire, it really has nothing to do with dealing with Iran. Okay, Iran is a huge problem. Okay, but we'll talk a little bit about that later too. Okay, so then with the 3 days of darkness, there could be a connection to, in Revelation 11, we read about the dead bodies for 3.5 days. That could connect to the 3 days of darkness. Okay, we also read Jesus in his prophecies talk about the Son of Man being in the heart of the earth for 3 days. Okay, the Son of Man has always been kind of this weird term that people don't totally understand. The Son of Man here, when Jesus talks about the Son of Man being in the heart of the earth for 3 days. Well, actually, I think there could be 2 fulfillments for this, where, we know that the Son of Man refers to Jesus. And so when it says the Son of Man is in the heart of the earth for 3 days, that could be a picture of the 3 days. Remember, I said the 3 days connects to Obama's presidency, Trump's presidency, and Biden's presidency. So that's 3 days right there. So what we had is that the Son of Man, so Jesus was kind of like dead during these 3 days, during these 3 presidencies. Okay. But then we could also see another fulfillment where if the Son of Man is referring to the Jewish people, that they being in the heart of the earth for 3 days could be Israel being attacked by Iran and being dead for 3 days. Okay, like that time might actually be 3 literal days. Okay. And then because it says in Exodus 10:21 with the, okay, does that come from Exodus 10:23? It talks about no, oh yeah, it says no one rose up for 3 days. Okay, like basically it's saying like no one came out of their houses for 3 days. Okay, no one rose up. Here, let me find it for you. No one, let's see, Exodus 10. Hang on just a sec, sorry about this. Exodus 10:23 says, they did not see one another, nor did anyone rise from his place for 3 days, but all the sons of Israel had light in their dwellings. Okay. So what we see, it's, so when it says nor did anyone rise from his place for 3 days, what we have is there was no resurrection for 3 days. Okay. And so what I think is that Israel's going to get attacked by Iran, and then Jesus is going to come and resurrect the Jewish people in Israel. Okay. That's what I believe. Okay. So then what we see too is the next plague is the plague on the firstborn of Egypt. Okay. And so what that is a picture of is Jesus cleaning out God's enemies. Okay. Now, there could be some overlap because the plague of locusts and the 3 days of darkness could also be included in this plague on the firstborn of Egypt. But basically, if you understand that right now, okay, the firstborn is a picture, the firstborn would be the picture of the leaders. Okay. And so right now what God has is that instead of the wheat being the leaders of the church right now, the tares are the leaders of the church. And right now in America, instead of God's people being the leaders of America, he has, like the firstborn of Egypt would be the leaders, or Biden's people would be considered like maybe the firstborn of Egypt. Okay, it's God's enemies that are in leadership in America, but also around the world. Okay. And so then, because we see kind of this pattern all throughout scripture where there's a reversal of fortune. And when Jacob comes to bless Ephraim and Manasseh, he crosses his arms. Okay. So there's a switch between the firstborn and this, and the secondborn. Okay. Where he switches. Okay. So that the current firstborn that are leaders go away. Okay. And I actually kind of think that the true firstborn of God are actually the ones that are kind of in bondage right now, waiting for the time when they will actually fulfill their true calling, which is to be God's leaders. Okay. But we see that Jesus is going to come and clean out God's enemies. I mean, the plague of locusts, civil war in America, I think is going to clean out God's enemies. some of God's enemies, and 3 days of darkness um, um, could clean out some of God's enemies in Israel. Anyways, okay, so then we see in the book of Revelation kind of a repeat of these patterns, okay? Because the first woe in Revelation is the locust, okay? So that repeats the plague of locust. Okay, the second woe is what we see as 4 angels are loosed to kill 1/3 of mankind, okay? And so it's possible that these 4 angels that are, okay, so 1/3 of mankind, okay, so remember Israel is the man, okay, the Christians are the women. Okay, so these 4 angels are loose to kill 1/3 of mankind. Could be Iran plus 3 others attacking Israel. Okay, so I mean, if you understand how Iran works, they have their proxies. Okay, so they definitely have at least 3 proxies, if not more. You know, and so actually, it's funny that I put Iran plus 3 others, but it could be just 4 of their proxies. You know, anyways, I'm not really sure. So we'll have to see how that gets fulfilled. But we see that they kill 1/3 of mankind with fire, smoke, and brimstone. Okay, and so when I see brimstone, sometimes I think of nuclear fallout. So it's possible that they actually attack Israel with nuclear weapons. That's a possibility. Okay, so then it says in Revelation, it says the 3rd woe is coming quickly. Okay, and it's actually it's kind of frustrating in the book of Revelation because it doesn't really tell you what the 3rd woe is. Okay, it just says it's coming quickly. And so, but if you remember that Jesus is coming quickly, then you can see that maybe the 3rd woe connects to Jesus coming to clean out God's enemies. Okay. So that's that. Okay. And so right now we're definitely, I think, at the end, you know, just the end of the birth pangs. Okay. And what's kind of interesting is that what I was wondering is that, okay, so on May 13th, we had the CDC say all the people that are vaccinated don't need to wear masks anymore. Okay. So what I was wondering if that was a picture of kind of the crowning of the head before the birth. Okay. Because now that people are not wearing masks, you can see their whole head. Okay. And so in a birth process, when you know, someone's giving birth, when they first see the head of the baby appear, they call it the crowning of the head. Okay. You know, and it's interesting because with the 3 days of the cupbearer and the baker, it talks about within 3 more days Pharaoh will lift up your head. And so we kind of see a reference to, you know, kind of this concept of a crowning happening. Okay, so anyway, so I wanted to bring out the verses that talk about birth pangs because I think they're very appropriate for the day and age that we're in right now. Okay, because I really think we're near the end of the birth pangs. Okay. And okay, so in Romans 8, we read, "For all who are being led by the Spirit of God, these are sons of God. For you have not received a spirit of slavery leading to fear again, but you have received a spirit of adoption as sons, by which we cry out, Abba, Father. The Spirit himself testifies with our spirit that we are children of God. And if children, heirs also, heirs of God and fellow heirs with Christ. If indeed we suffer with them, so that we may also be glorified with them. For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory that is to be revealed to us. For the anxious longing of the creation waits eagerly for the revealing of the sons of God. For the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself would also be set free from its slavery to corruption into the freedom of the glory of the children of God. So let's pick this apart really carefully. Okay, so we don't have a spirit leading to fear. And so it's interesting that you saw kind of like the tares in the church. They were afraid of Biden being president and they're afraid of the vaccine. Okay, if we belong, if we are sons of God, we don't need to be afraid. Okay, we don't need to be afraid that America is going to be taken away from us. Okay, God's got it under control. Okay. And so what we want to do is receive this spirit adoption where we cry out, Abba, Father. Okay, so if we really belong to God, we will understand that he's our Father and we can call out to him during times of distress. Okay, and, lay all our burdens on him, okay, to take care of. Okay. And so what I really think was, especially during this war in Israel, is that God was wanting us, he was using it as a time of testing to see if we were going to call out Abba, Father, and during that time pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Okay. Because it says they will prosper who love you. Okay. And so I think that God was using this war in Israel to test us, to see if we love Israel, and that we were going to pray for the Jewish people in Israel, pray for the peace in Jerusalem. Okay. Let's see. Okay. And so the Spirit testifies that we are children of God, if indeed, okay, and fellow heirs of Christ, if indeed we suffer with him, so that we may also be glorified with him. Okay, so what's interesting is that we saw Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. He said to his disciples, he said, "Can't you keep watch with me for 1 hour?" Okay, now if we understand that 1 hour is the time of judgment, okay, like Babylon, their judgment they fall in an hour. Okay. But an hour time frame is the time of judgment. Okay. And so what we have is that Jesus was wanting his disciples, Jesus knew it was a time of suffering, and he wanted his disciples to keep watch with him, to pray out to God, like so much so that you're almost like, Jesus was almost like dropping drops of blood. He was wanting his disciples to be willing to suffer with him, during this time of suffering. And then if we do suffer with God to the point of, some of us might be called to shed blood. We might be called to die, okay, during this time of suffering, okay? And we need to be willing to, if that's our call, if that's God's calling for us, we need to be willing, to shed blood. Because the good news is that, if indeed we suffer with Christ, we will also be glorified with him. Okay. Because Paul says, "I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory that is to be revealed to us." So when Jesus finally comes, this glory that's revealed, our sufferings are going to seem like nothing. Okay. So that's cool. That's a really cool promise. Okay. And so then we see that the anxious longing of the creation waits eagerly for the revealing of the sons of God. Okay. God's people, the creation is waiting eagerly for the revealing of God's people. Okay. Why? Okay. Because if you understand that God's people, the Messiah and God's people bring life, and God's enemies bring death. The longing of creation, they want this spirit of life. people want the spirit of life. The world probably, the actual physical things probably want life. Okay, because it says, for the creation was subjected to futility. But because of him who subjected it. Okay, so remember that it's God that's subjecting his creation to futility. It's God who's really calling the shots here, okay? Not the devil, okay? And so some of the futility that we see is the war in Israel. We're going to see the riots in America. I'm sure you can see a lot of things that seem pretty futile right now, okay? And so the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, okay? None of us really wanted to go through this suffering. But it says, but because of him who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will also be set free from its slavery to corruption, into the freedom of the glory of the children of God. Okay? And so, right now the world is in slavery to corruption. Okay? Just like in Egypt, we are like slaves in Egypt right now. The people who are running our country right now we're slaves to them. Okay, we're slaves to the corruption that Biden and the left bring. Okay, but then we also see people being enslaved to the corruption that Trump brought. But what we're gonna see is the freedom of the glory of the children of God. Okay, so pretty cool. Okay, and then it says, for we know that the whole creation groans and suffers the pains of childbirth together until now. And not only this, but we also ourselves, having the first fruits of the Spirit, even we ourselves groan within ourselves, waiting eagerly for our adoption as sons, the redemption of our body. Okay, so that groaning within ourselves, as we see kind of the bad things that happen in the world, hopefully we're groaning. How the Spirit, prays through us through our groans, and so we're waiting eagerly for our adoption as sons, the redemption of our body. For in hope we have been saved, but hope that is seen is not hope, for who hopes for what he already sees? Okay? So that would be like a picture of these false prophets that make it seem like, they keep saying like, I see God doing great things right now. And I see revival coming, and but that's all false. Okay, I mean, God's not bringing victory right now. I mean, it hasn't happened yet. We're still suffering the pains of childbirth right now. Anyways, so hope that is seen is not hope, for who hopes for what he already sees. But if we hope for what we do not see, okay, what do we not see right now? We don't see God. We don't see Jesus right now. But with perseverance, we wait eagerly for it. Okay, so what we have is the false prophets of Trump and the false followers of Trump. They have their Messiahs here already. Okay, but we are still waiting for our Messiah. Okay, with perseverance, we're waiting for our Messiah. Okay. Matthew 24. Let's see. Okay, as he was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately and said, tell us, when will these things happen, and what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? And Jesus answered and said to them, see that no one misleads you, for many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and will mislead many. You'll be hearing of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not frightened, for those things must take place, but that is not yet the end. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and in various places there will be famines and earthquakes. But all these things are the beginning of birth pangs. Then they will deliver you to tribulation and will kill you, and you will be hated by all nations because of my name. At that time many will fall away and will betray one another and hate one another. Many false prophets will arise and mislead many. because lawlessness is increased, most people's love will grow cold. But the one who endures to the end, he will be saved. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation, which was spoken of through Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, let the reader understand. Then those who are in Judea must flee to the mountains. But woe to those who are pregnant and to those who are nursing babies in those days. For then there will be great tribulation, such as not occurred since the beginning of the world until now, nor ever will. Unless those days had been cut short, no life would have been saved. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be cut short. So just a lot packed into here. So we definitely see, okay, so God said, see to it that no one misleads you, for many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, or I am the anointed one, and will mislead many. Okay, we saw that with Obama, Biden, and Trump acting like Messianic figures, but, definitely a lot of other people too. And it's interesting that it says, see that no one misleads you, because, we read about, I think this is in First or Second Thessalonians, the deluding influence. Okay, so I definitely saw with Trump that he brought this, that, God allowed this deluding influence to come on the followers of Trump. So people were deluded by the signs that Trump was performing, like the quote unquote peace deals. Okay. And so I actually think, it was kind of interesting because I was watching a lot of, prophecy people, and it seemed like all of a sudden there was this time frame where people just went nuts, and a lot of the prophecy teachers started just dabbling in conspiracy theories and just talking nuts. And so that was, maybe like 6 months ago. Like, I'm kind of wondering if that happened around, like, September 15th was when Trump, had his peace signings. And so I'm wondering if that was kind of the start of this deluding influence, that people were seeing these peace, quote unquote, peace deals that Trump was doing. And so then they started looking to him as a messianic figure. So that's what I'm kind of wondering. And so we definitely see a lot of people that were misled by Trump, okay, and the false prophets of Trump. Okay, and so then it says you'd be hearing of wars and rumors of wars. So we saw war in Israel. Okay, but then it says that is not the end. Okay, so I'm sure if you were like me, you were wondering, okay, is this war going to, bring the end? Okay, so, it was kind of interesting to have the ceasefire. So it was not quite the end during that war. Okay, and then it says, so we could kind of see maybe a little bit of a repeat here of like almost like the three woes, because it says, so we have war in Israel, and then it says nation will rise against nation, so that could be a picture of the civil war in America. But what was interesting too is that we saw, just even the very day when they were announcing the ceasefire, there was like anti-Semitic attacks in New York. There was still clashes on the Temple Mount in Israel, so definitely still seeing, we're definitely seeing nation rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. And then it says in various places there'd be earthquakes and famines. Okay, so just even yesterday, another volcano's going off. There's a bunch of volcanoes going off around the world. And then all these storms have been hail and tornadoes and flooding. And then yesterday too, they announced another a hurricane. It might end up not doing anything, but one of the things they were surprised about is how early it is, because it's not quite hurricane season. And then so definitely all that's going on too. All all the natural type disasters. And then, okay, so then it says, okay, so all these things are the beginning of birth pangs. I mean, basically, we've seen those since the beginning of the birth pangs. And then, um, it says they'll deliver you to tribulation and will kill you. So, what's interesting is that I'm seeing that I think it's possible that one of the things that we're seeing is I think we're possibly seeing God's people suffering persecution even from the Republicans, okay, the Republicans that follow Trump, because and I connect this to kind of the 666 from the beast from the sea, because what we saw was Liz Cheney was ousted on May 12th because she dared to stand up against Trump. She thinks Trump's dangerous, okay, and that his lie about the election being stolen is dangerous, okay. And so what do we see? We saw that Trump and his followers, the Republicans, they have a lot of power, and so they were able to get her, well, at least ousted out of her leadership position. But we see a lot of persecution of the people that aren't willing to support Trump, okay. So that's happening right now. And so it says they will deliver you to tribulation and will kill you. I mean, you could put like kill you in quotes, because they might not actually be shedding blood, at least here in America. But they can get you kicked out of your job, and, so in a way it's like you're kind of experiencing a type of death. But we definitely see around the world that, I mean, Christians are actually getting killed, literally. Like in Afghanistan, they were, when the Americans troops were like pulling out, they were bombing the schools. I mean, I don't know how many of those people would belong to God, but some of them probably do. But then, there's definitely Christian persecution. We just don't hear about it in this country. I mean, it's not on the news at all. Okay. And then, so we see Christians suffering persecution. We see anti-Semitism. And then it says they'll deliver you to tribulation and kill you. So we're going to see Israel get killed by Iran, I think. And then it says you'll be hated by all nations because of my name. So Israel is definitely hated by all nations. America is hated by all nations. And it's not a political thing. It's because they hate God. Okay. And then it says, at that time, many will fall away. False prophets will arise. Lawlessness will be increased. Okay. So then it says, okay, but what you want to do is endure till the end. Okay. So hang in there. Okay. So then it says, when you see the abomination of desolation, which was spoken of through Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, let the reader understand. Okay, so the abomination of desolation, I think it could relate to war in Israel. It could relate to, I think it could have multiple fulfillments, okay? Obviously there's one that connects to what Daniel's talking about. And I think I bring up those verses later. But it could have multiple fulfillments where it also connects to, basically an abomination of desolation is anything that causes desolation and destruction, okay? And so that was definitely this war in Israel caused destruction. The civil war in America is going to cause great destruction. When Iran attacks Israel, that's going to cause great destruction. I think the actual final fulfillment of the abomination of desolation is this Iran attacking Israel. And then, so then it says those who are in Judea. So when you see all these things happening, those who are in Judea, those who belong to the Jewish Messiah, Jesus, should flee to the mountains. Okay. And so, we see in the Psalms, it says, look to the mountains. Where does my help come from? God is my help. Okay. So we need to look to God for our help. Okay. And then woe to those who are pregnant. Those would be those waiting for the Messiah. Woe to those who are nursing babies. Okay, those would be those who already have a messianic figure like Trump or Biden. Okay. And the Great Tribulation could just be like a 3-day thing. Okay. It could be really short and quick. Okay, so we just have to see how things get fulfilled. Okay, because it does say that God cuts those days short. Okay. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so we're moving to Revelation here. Okay. So in Revelation 12, it says, a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, and the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. And she was with child, and she cried out, being in labor and in pain to give birth. Okay. Then another sign appeared in heaven, a great red dragon. And then... Okay, so I don't know if I'll read all this because I think I did it in my last... Okay, well, let's just talk about this. Okay, so what I wanted to mention was this: the great sign in heaven. I do not think it was the September 23rd sign. Okay, I don't think that was it. Okay, because what we see when it says a great sign appeared in heaven is, I think that's a picture of like, okay, so heaven would connect to Israel. Okay, and then so when it says like a woman clothed with the sun. Okay, it'd be a picture of, like, the sun would be a picture of the Messiah. Okay, the moon under her feet would be like maybe Trump being under the woman's feet. Okay, and so this woman would not be a follower of Trump, she'd be a follower of the Messiah. Okay, she'd be clothed with Messiah. And then, because that's a picture of the people that get thrown in the fiery furnace, they're clothed. Okay. And then the Messiah joins them in the midst of the fiery furnace. Okay. And so what's interesting about this woman is she has a crown of 12 stars. Okay. So I think what that connects to is that it's a picture of, a woman that recognizes the 12 tribes of Israel. And that, like, Joseph has 12 brothers rather than the 10 spies. Okay. Which would be like the 10 horns, which I think connects to BLM. Okay. So she recognizes that, God's people are connected to, 12 tribes. Okay. And then and she would be connected to, okay, so Vashti wouldn't appear with her crown, and then God says, what does he say? I think he says persevere so you don't lose your crown. Okay, so this woman did not lose her crown. She has her crown and 12 stars. Okay, and it says she was with child and she cried out, being in labor and in pain to give birth. Okay, hopefully we're crying out to God during these labor pains. Okay, and then another sign appeared in heaven, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Okay, so I wrote Obama. And then, okay, so the dragon could be Obama, and then it says his tail swept away 1/3 of the stars of heaven and threw him to the earth. So Iran could be the tail, killing 1/3 of mankind. Okay, but also Biden could be the tail who's, got a third of Americans following him. And then it says a dragon stood before the woman who was about to give birth, so that when she gave birth he might devour her child. And she gave birth to a son, a male, who was to rule all the nations with a rod of iron. Okay, so I think this first birth is a picture of Trump being birthed. Okay, because he does rule all the nations with the rod of iron. Okay, and then he was caught up by God to his throne. Okay, because Trump did a bunch of stuff related to Israel, and the woman fled into the wilderness for 1260 days. That's the time of Trump, time of the 666. And then there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels waging war with the dragon. See, the thing is that I think with these verses is you could have multiple fulfillments, because obviously this birth story could then connect to the birthing of the Messiah. Okay, but it says there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels waging war with the dragon. And so that could be a picture of Netanyahu and Israel fighting with Hamas. Okay, the dragon and his angels waged war, and they were not strong enough, and there was no longer a place found for them in heaven. Okay, so they ended up having a ceasefire. Okay, then the great dragon was thrown down, the serpent of old, who's called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. So that could connect to Obama and Biden's followers in civil war in America. You know, a picture of the 10 horns who share authority for 1 hour with the beast. Okay. Then I heard a loud voice in heaven say, now the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Christ have come, for the accuser of our brethren has been thrown down, he who accuses them before our God day and night. Okay. So definitely connects to the people on, the people on the left accusing, well, this connects to both, God's enemies on the left and God's enemies on the right, because God's enemies on the left accuse God's people of being racist, homophobic, and all that stuff. But then you have God's enemies on the right accusing God's people because they won't follow Trump, So definitely see a lot of people accusing God's people. And then how we overcome is because of the blood of the Lamb and because of the word of our testimony, and we do not love our life even when faced with death. Okay. For this reason, rejoice, O heavens, and you and dwell in them. Okay, so maybe that's what Israel's doing right now, is rejoicing because they had a ceasefire. But God says, woe to the earth and the sea, because now the devil has come to you, having great wrath, knowing that he has only a short time. So, maybe this, spirit of militant spirit is now coming to, from the devil is now coming to America. Okay, and then it says, when the dragon saw that he was thrown down to the earth, he persecuted the woman who gave birth to the male, so persecuting the Trump followers. But it says, and then, that could be a picture of when Biden got into power. He battled with Trump, got into power, because then it says the 2 wings of the great eagle were given to the woman so that she could fly into the wilderness to her place, where she was nourished for time, times, and half a time. Okay, so I'm wondering if the time, times, and half a time connects to the 3 Passovers and the half a week time frame, which would be like the 3 days of, the dead bodies in Israel. And so she was nourished from the presence of the serpent, and the serpent poured water like a river out of his mouth after the woman, so that he might cause her to be swept away with the flood. So remember that people could be a river, so a river could be a river of people. That could connect to civil war in America. But the earth helped the woman, and the earth would be like maybe a picture of Trump's peeps, opened its mouth and drank up the river which the dragon poured out of his mouth. Okay, but that also has kind of some prophetic shadows to Korah's rebellion, because that's where the actual earth opened up and swallowed Korah and his followers. Okay, so the dragon was enraged with the woman and went off to make war. Okay, so then what's interesting here is then it says, and see, the dragon might be switching, at different times the dragon could connect to different people. Like I said, like sometimes it could be Obama, sometimes it could be Biden, and I'm wondering here, so the dragon was enraged with the woman that could be a picture of Iran now, and went off to make war with the rest of her children. So after the Civil War in America, then Iran is mad at America and went off to make war with the rest of her children who keep the commandments of God and hold to the testimony of Jesus. So Iran attacks Israel, but that could also be a picture of the war in Jesus's camp. Okay, multiple fulfillments. Okay, when Jesus gathers all his people, then we see, that could be when Obama returns and leads a bunch of people to go fight against Jesus's camp. Phew. Hopefully that wasn't too confusing. Okay. And then in First Thessalonians, it says, Now as to the time and epochs, brethren, you have no need of anything to be written to you. For you yourselves know full well that the day of the Lord may come just like a thief in the night. While they were saying peace and safety, then destruction will come upon them suddenly, like labor pains upon a woman with child, and they will not escape. But you, brethren, are not in darkness, that the day would overtake you like a thief, for you are all sons of light and sons of day. We are not of night nor of darkness. So then let us not sleep as others do, but let us be alert and sober. For those who sleep they're sleeping at night, and those who get drunk at night. But since we are of the day, let us be sober, having put on the breastplate of faith and love, and as a helmet the hope of salvation. For God has not destined us for wrath, but for obtaining salvation through our Lord Jesus Christ. So we see, basically these birth pangs are leading up to the time of wrath. Okay, but we're not destined for that wrath. Okay, we're going to be saved through Jesus. Okay. So what's interesting, it says, okay, so we know full well that the day of the Lord will come just like a thief in the night. Okay, so we definitely see Biden being a thief in the night, because right now Biden and his administration, or whoever it all is, they're up to spending like $10 trillion of Americans' money. Okay, America's money. Okay, so definitely bankrupting this country. He is the thief in the night. Okay, stealing from America. Stealing from Americans. Okay, and so then it says, while they are saying peace and safety, and so some of the ways they're saying peace and safety is they're saying COVID is better, which it kind of is in some ways, but it's not eliminated. Okay, and then we see peace and safety with the ceasefire in Israel, and then we're also seeing people thinking that there's peace and safety because of this quote-unquote peace plan with Iran. And it was so weird because while war was going on in Israel, they were still working on this peace plan. So that was just kind of bizarre. Okay, so then destruction will come upon them suddenly. Okay, so we're in the phase right now where people are saying peace and safety. Okay, and then just like labor pains are sudden, so this destruction is going to come sudden. Okay, and then they will not escape. God's enemies, the people that are saying peace and safety, will not escape. Okay. Let's see. So Civil War in America, it's a picture of, remember Rebecca gives birth to twins, that birth story. There's two nations in her womb that will be separated from her body, and so that would be a picture of the two groups of people in America that end up fighting in this Civil War. Okay, but we're not in darkness. We have light during the 3 days, or Israel has light during the 3 days of darkness in the book of Exodus. Okay, so I think we're going to have light during the 3 days of darkness. And then, okay, so we are not to sleep as others do. Okay, let's not be like the disciples in the Garden of Gethsemane who aren't praying during this time of suffering. Okay, let us be alert and sober. Okay, for those who sleep, they're sleeping at night. That could be a picture of Trump and his followers that are have this deluding influence. I mean, they're asleep. Okay. And then it says, and those who get drunk at night. That could connect to Biden and his peeps. Okay. That connects to the story of Belshazzar, drinking the wine out of the holy vessels. Okay. So Biden and his followers are getting drunk on the holy things of America. Okay. But we're supposed to be sober. Okay. Okay. So let's talk about time frames. Okay. Because I want you to see that I think we've fulfilled a lot of the time frames that we see in the scriptures. Okay. So I want to talk about the 70 weeks because that's a very vital time frame. In Daniel 9:1, okay, first of all, in Daniel 9:1, it talks about it being the first year of Darius the Mede. Okay, so remember that Trump is Cyrus, Biden is Darius the Mede. So we are in the first year of Biden. Daniel remembers that there's 70 years for the completion of the desolations of Jerusalem. Okay, so actually what's interesting is that we're in the 73rd year of Israel. Okay, but what I think is interesting is that what we read about in the prophets is that there's a prophecy of burning weapons of war for 7 years. Okay, so I think when you add 73 to 7, you get 80. Okay, and then so that time frame of 80 comes from a psalm where it talks about 70 or 80. Okay. But we can definitely see that we got to be in the time frame because the 70 years have been completed for Israel. Okay. And then but Gabriel comes and tells Daniel, okay, it's not just 70 years, but 70 weeks have been decreed for your people in your holy city to finish the transgression, to make an end of sin, to make atonement for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy place. Okay, so I wanted to point out that 70 weeks after the deal of the century is June 1st. Okay, so we are so close to wrapping this all up. If it takes 70 weeks to finish the transgression, then we are, nearing the end. If the time to start counting the 70 weeks really connects to the deal of the century. And I think it does, because look at verse 25. It says, so you are to know and discern that from the issuing of a decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. It'll be built again with plaza and moat, even in times of distress. Okay, so what's interesting is there was a decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem. So what's interesting is that word restore connects to return. And so it was kind of like this thinking with the deal of the century was like, okay, we're going to return the land back to the Palestinians. If you actually read the deal of the century, it was about, it was kind of returning, it was kind of believing the lie that some of this land belongs to the Palestinians. Okay. And so it was about giving land back to the Palestinians. It's funny because I keep saying that and it bugs me because they don't own the land, but then it says this decree was to restore, the deal of the century was about restoring the land and rebuilding Jerusalem. And so the deal of the century was a proposal by Trump to divide Jerusalem into 2 cities. So he was actually going to change Jerusalem to be Jerusalem and East Jerusalem. Okay, so he was going to rebuild Jerusalem, make it a different type of city. Okay, so from the issuing of this decree, which was the deal of the century, until Messiah the Prince, what we're going to see is 7 weeks and 62 weeks. Okay, so what's possible is that we're actually looking for the Messiah to come on the 69th week. Okay, because of this verse, okay? And that he's going to complete things by the 70th time frame, the 70th week time frame, that by June 1st he's going to get a bunch done. Okay, so it's funny because I read this now and now it says something different to me. It says it will be built again with plaza and moat even in times of distress. So I realized that it could be that Jerusalem being built again with plaza and moat even in times of distress connects to the work of Jesus rebuilding Jerusalem. Okay, even while civil war is going on, while the world's going crazy, Jesus could be working on building stuff. Okay, but I also wondered if there was a connection to that the Iran deal gets built again, even while Israel's getting attacked. Like I mentioned, that they were, during the times of distress while there was war in Israel, they were still getting together talking about this Iran deal. So the plaza could be talking about like nuclear facilities. The moat is like protection from inspections with the Iran deal. So that's a possible connection. Okay, so what's interesting is that we saw 7 weeks after the deal of the century was the start of the coronavirus shutdown. Okay, which was a picture of God's people living in booths. 62 weeks, then we would have 62 weeks of dealing with the coronavirus. So the 69th week after the deal of the century would lead us to May 25th, okay, which is also the third Passover. Okay. Okay, so then in Daniel 9, we see that after the 62 weeks, the Messiah or the anointed one will be cut off and have nothing, and the people of the prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. And its end will come with the flood, even to the end there'll be war, desolations are determined, and he will make a firm covenant with the many for 1 week. Okay, so what if the 1 week is the 69th week? Okay, leading us into the 70th week. But in the middle of the week, he will put a stop to sacrifice and grain offering, and on the wing of abominations will come one who makes desolate, even until a complete destruction, one that is decreed, is poured out on the one who makes desolate. So what's interesting, it says on the wing of abominations will come one who makes desolate. So remember how I said like the Iran guy could maybe, while he's seeing civil war happening in America, then he's going to come and do a complete destruction. He's going to come and, make Israel desolate, and even until a complete destruction. But then, like, remember that, whatever you do to Israel gets done to you, so if he completely destroys Israel, then God will come and destroy him. Okay. And so, okay, another possible 7-week time frame too, and there's always multiple fulfillments. I mean, I think there's 62 all over the place. There's 7 all over the place. Okay, another 7 weeks would be the 7th week after the restart of the Iran talks. So on April 6th, they restarted the Iran talks. Okay, in I think it's Vienna. I'm not really sure where that is, but anyways, all the countries got together and restarted the talks. To try to, because remember Trump, he pulled out of the Iran talks, and then when Biden came in, he wanted to reinstate them. So 7 weeks from that April 6th date is May 25th. Okay, so April 6th was the start of their Iran talks. Okay, which was interesting because that was week 62 after the deal of the century. Okay, so like I said, we see 62 all over the place, 7 all over the place. So 62 weeks of dealing with the coronavirus, which would be the 69th week after the DOC, would lead us to May 25th. Oh, I already mentioned that. Okay, so what's interesting is we see this phrase, after the 62 weeks, the Messiah will be cut off and have nothing. Okay, so that word Messiah, could actually mean the anointed one. Okay, so what we see, multiple fulfillments. The first one could be Israel is cut off on April 6th. Okay, Hamas tries to destroy the city and the sanctuary. Iran is the prince to come. Okay. So when we read Daniel 9:26, after the 62 weeks of the deal of the century, the anointed one will be cut off and have nothing, because Israel will be cut off and have nothing connected to this Iran deal, because Biden's going to let Iran have everything that they want. And the people of the prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. So if the prince who is to come is Iran, will destroy the city and the sanctuary. So we definitely saw Hamas coming to try to, they shot missiles at Jerusalem, shot missiles, at Israel and Tel Aviv. And then it says, and its end with a flood. Okay, well, anyway, so the people of the prince who is to come, that would be the Iran guy. But also could be a connection to Obama too. I mean, I think they're really, really connected. And then, okay, and so then it says, and its end with the flood, like I said, flood of people. Even to the end, there be war, civil war in America, desolations are determined. Okay, so then what do we have? Jesus coming, making a firm covenant with the many for 1 week. But in the middle of the week, he puts a stop to sacrifice and grain offering. So I think he puts a stop. Okay, so I think a stop to sacrifice and grain offering is, a sacrifice would be maybe connected to the Jewish people getting killed, and then grain offering is a picture of the Christians getting killed. Anyways, so then what we have is May 26th to June 1st would be the week. The middle of the week could be the possible week of Jesus, and then the middle of the week would be May 29th, okay? Which would connect to where we see 3.5 days of dead bodies. Okay. Because then I think he comes and resurrects Lazarus, who's a picture of the Jewish people in Israel, who have been in the grave for 4 days. Okay. Or 3.5 days, or whatever. Okay. So I wanted to talk about the third Passover. So many people on YouTube have been looking at the second Passover, and then they kind of gave up. But what I really see in scripture is wait, hang on a second. Okay, but what I really see in scripture is kind of this prophetic shadow of the third Passover. Okay. So we see it in Hezekiah, where in Second Chronicles, Hezekiah and the people, they actually gathered to celebrate the feast. Okay, so it talks about they gathered to celebrate the Feast of Unleavened Bread in the second month. That would be the Passover, the second Passover. And then it says the whole assembly decided to celebrate the feast another 7 days. So they celebrated the 7 days with joy. So that could be a picture of the third Passover. Okay. We also see it in the Noah story, in Genesis 8, because what we saw is that at the end of 40 days, Noah opened the window of the ark and sent out a raven, and it flew here and there until the water was dried up from the earth. So I'm wondering if the raven could be a picture of Trump. It could also be a picture of Biden, so I'm not really sure. But kind of like Trump got kicked out of the ark, like Trump got kicked out of America, sort of, kind of. But he's still flying here and there and stuff. And then, because water, when we read in Genesis about the water like keeps growing for 150 days. That could be a picture of the lies of Trump, like growing for 150 days, because they end up like covering the mountains. Okay, so that could be a picture of that deleting influence. But we see that Noah sends out a dove like 3 different times, okay, like after 7 days. And so I'm wondering, the first time when he sends out the dove, okay, he sends out a dove from him to see if the water was abated from the face of the earth. If water is a picture of Trump's lies, he first sends out this dove, but the dove found no resting place for the sole of her foot. Okay, so there's no rest for Iran because of the sanctions that Trump put on Iran. Because remember, there's like the serpent fights with the woman or the woman's seed. Okay, so that could be a picture of Iran like fighting with Trump. And Iran didn't have rest because of the sanctions. Okay, so she returned to him in the ark. So now, okay, so if now Biden's in the ark, anyways, I'm getting kind of confused here. But what we see is just kind of this idea of the return to the Iran deal. And then, so he put out his hand, that could be Biden, and took her and brought her into the ark to himself. So Biden's making a deal with Iran. Okay. And that happened on the 6th day of Passover, was April 2nd, the first Passover, which was Good Friday. That was when U.S. was invited to the Iran talks. Okay. Then on the second Passover, okay, so what's interesting with the second Passover is he sends out the dove, and the dove came to him toward evening, and behold, in her beak was a freshly picked olive leaf, so no one knew that the water was abated from the earth. Okay. So, what we had in the second Passover is that we had Biden did a speech on day 2 of the second Passover. And so what we saw in his speech is that it was like he totally overturned a whole bunch of Trump's policies. Okay. And so if America is like the olive tree, Biden is cutting off the branches off this tree. Okay. Where he's cutting down this tree. He's chopping the olive tree of America. Okay. So that's a possible fulfillment. I mean, I'm not really sure about these things, but these are kind of guesses that I'm making. Okay, and then it says he waited another 7 days, so that would bring us to the third Passover, and sent out the dove, but she did not return to him again. So on the third Passover, somebody gets sent out and doesn't return back into the ark. Okay, so that could be the people involved in the Civil War. Okay, so third Passover, May 25th, coming up. Okay, okay, the beast from the sea in Revelation, I definitely think is BLM. There's 10 horns. I talked about this, I think, in my last video, so I won't go over that here. Okay, they claim, okay, okay, so who is like the beast and who is able to wage war with him? Apparently Trump's people are going to try. And then it says, okay, 42 months were given to this beast, authority to act for 42 months. That relates to the time of Trump, okay? And then he opened his mouth in blasphemies against God to blaspheme his name and his temple. Okay, so BLM blasphemed Christians in America. Okay, all who dwell on the earth will worship him. Okay, because they're like bullies. Okay, yeah, I definitely talked about this in one of my previous videos. But I believe that's BLM, and then the beast from the earth is Trump. Okay, and so I talked about this too, but I really wanted to mention, I highlighted the end of this about the 666, because I definitely saw that very clearly with Liz Cheney. Okay, so it says, okay, so first it says he causes all the small, the great, the rich, the poor, the freemen, and the slaves to be given a mark on their right hand or their forehead. Okay, that was because of the deal of the century, okay? But he had, Trump did 6 quote unquote peace deals. Okay, that's where that number 6 relates to Trump. But then it says he provides that no one will be able to buy or sell except the one who has the mark, either the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for the number is that of man, and his number is 666. So I do not believe the vaccine is the mark of the beast, because one, it has nothing to do with your right hand or your what's it say? He causes all to get a mark on their right hand or their forehead. I mean, it's got nothing to do with the vaccine. And the right hand has to do kind of with like, Jesus has a thief on his right and a thief on on his left. That could connect to the right, the militant on the right. Okay, the forehead kind of has to do with how you think. But I also kind of think like, well, if you understand like the tefillin, the Jewish people, put that scripture box on their forehead. And so like, that could be a picture of the Messiah, but what we have really is that these people, instead of, the Messiah being on their forehead, because when you have that box, when they have their box on the head, then you have like the two eyes would be like the two witnesses, or the thief on the left and the right. So Jesus in the middle and the thief on the left and the thief on the right. But these people that are getting the mark of the beast, they don't have Jesus on their forehead, they have Trump on their forehead. Okay. So that connects to that. But then it says he provides that no one will be able to buy or sell. And so buying or selling is connected to participating in the marketplace. And so what we saw, even though Trump's not even president, he still has a lot of power. And, and so if you don't agree with him, if you're not following him, if you don't have this mark, either his name, if you won't, follow him, then you won't be able to buy or sell. Okay, so what we saw on May 12th was that Liz Cheney was ousted from her Republican leadership position because she believes Trump is dangerous to the Republican Party because of his false lie about the election being stolen. So I mean, that's a very prominent picture of someone who's not allowed to buy or sell. Okay. But there's other people, um, so it's, but I wanted to point out her because it's very, very evident, very strongly evident. I mean, basically, Trump's, I think Trump is the third horseman of the apocalypse. It's the black horse with the scales. Okay, the scales connect to buying or selling. Trump's religion is a religion of buying or selling. The religion of Babylon is a religion of buying and selling. He's the harlot of Babylon. Okay. Okay. So, so here's the statue. I think we're approaching the feet part of the statue. The feet and the toes are part iron and part clay. So Trump's peeps and BLM would be like the iron. Maybe they connect to the 10 toes, and the Messiah's peeps would be clay. They were moldable by God. And they weren't rebellious. Iron kind of has this concept of rebelliousness. Definitely the militant connect to the iron. And then what you have is 2 feet and 10 toes, so that kind of connects to the spies in the wilderness, where 10 of them have no faith, but 2 of them do. So that's what I'm wondering. So we're kind of at the feet part, but then what happens with the statue is that a rock a stone is cut out of the mountain and smashes the statue. Okay, I talked about this in my last video where but I left this in there because we're talking numbers. So 62, Darius the Mede gets the kingdom at the age of 62. So that was 62 days after 11/7, after Biden was declared a winner. So Darius the Mede connects to Biden. At 62, Trump was cut off. Did I think I missed that. Let's see. Okay, because the second one that's cut off. Okay, so the second 62. Okay, so I talked about Israel being cut off on April 6th. And then on May 25th, that's another 62. Because that's 62 weeks after the shutdown on May 25th. So I think we're going to see either America, Trump, or Biden get cut off on that day. But then it's interesting that we saw when Biden, became president at 62 days after 11/7 that, that was like Trump was cut off. So 62 connects to being cut off. And then we see a bunch of 7-Elevens connected to Biden too. And then it says when they finished their testimony, that would be the two witnesses, the beast that comes out of the abyss will make war with them, overcome them, and kill them. So I think it's like three things. Like first Biden, because really, if you think about this, first Biden wages war with Trump in the election and wins the election. Okay. And then we see Hamas fighting with Israel would be like the third battle. And then the fourth one, or the third one, would be like the Civil War in America. Where, the beast is, where they're fighting with Trump's people then and actually killing them then. And then we're going to see too that, Iran, kills the people in Israel. So multiple fulfillments of that. Okay. So then in Daniel 12, we see 1290 days. And so, I think the 1290 days can connect to 526 because, so it says, from the time that the regular sacrifice is abolished, this is from Daniel 12:11, and the abomination of desolation is set up, there will be 1290 days. Okay, so one of the things that happened was, is that on November 14th in 2016, that was when Obama had a news conference and he encouraged his Americans to give Trump time to adjust. It was almost like, he was passing the baton to Trump on that day. Okay. And then, so if you add 1260 days to that, you get, 1290 days to that, you get, May 26th, which was when the riots started. Okay. So it's kind of like if you saw, it says from the time that the regular sacrifice is abolished. So kind of what we had was with Obama, he was on a regular basis kind of like sacrificing God's people. He was, quote unquote killing God's people or whatever. But that got abolished when he lost power. Okay. But then this abomination of desolation was set up during the time of Trump on May 26th, where riots started. And so kind of like, they kind of got power again. Okay, so that's 1290 days. Okay. And then what I think is we're going to see is 12 months. Okay, so what we read about in Esther is that there's 12 months of beauty treatments. Okay. And so what we see is that the 12 months of this BLM rioting is taking us to May 25th, 2021. So from May 26, 2020 to May 25th, 2021 is 12 months. Okay. And so the beauty treatments end for God's people end on May 25th. Okay. We're done. For the days of their beautification were completed as follows: 6 months with oil and myrrh, and 6 months with spices and the cosmetics for women. Okay. Okay, so that's the 1290 days. The 1335 days, I connect that to okay, so that's from Daniel 12:12. Blessed are those who wait and remain until the end of the 1335 days. Okay, so that I connect that to September 15th was in 2020 was the day of the peace, quote unquote, peace deal signings in Washington. That was the 1335th day of Trump's presidency. Okay, but what you gotta remember is, so everyone's looking for the fulfillment of this 1335 days, but I think it's already been fulfilled. But what we gotta remember is in Daniel 12:13, Gabriel says to Daniel, "But as for you, Daniel, go your way until the end." Okay? You will rest, and then at the end of days, you will rise again to receive the inheritance set aside for you. Okay? So we don't want to stop at the 1335 days and go, "Oh, look, I found my Messiah on September 15th. This guy who's making a peace deals with all these countries in Israel." No, you don't want to do that. You want to keep going on. You want to keep persevering and waiting for the true Messiah to come, for Jesus to come. Okay. So go your way until the end. You want to wait until the very end when Jesus comes. Okay, and so the 1260 days connects to the time of the two witnesses. That's when they prophesy. Also connects to, that's when the woman was in the wilderness. Okay. And so 1260 connects to, okay, so 12/6/2017 was connects to like, okay, 12/6/2017 was when Trump said he was going to move the embassy to Jerusalem. That happened on 12/6/2017. So there's a connection to that. The 1260, there's some symbolic stuff with these 1260 days, because you see 12/6 in there, but you could also take 12/6 and parse it out and get 666. But what's interesting too is that 12/6/2017, you'd add 1260 days, brings us to May 18th. Okay. And so I was kind of going, well, what, like, why? It didn't seem like, that seems kind of weird. Okay, that was on May 18th. But if you look at May 18th, it's actually 18 itself is like 666. Okay. And then so 1260 days after 12/6 takes us to May 18. But then I remember that God told Noah, like, after 7 more days. Okay. So it's like the 1260 days is on the 18th, and then the 1267 days are on the 25th. Okay, so that's what I'm wondering. So I'm not really sure, but that's the thought that I had. But we also see 42 months is also the 1260 time frame. The beast from the sea is allowed to, they're given authority for 42 months, and so I think that's during the time of Trump and Netanyahu, during the time of the two witnesses. The nations tread the holy city underfoot for 42 months. What's interesting about the 42 number is that it's like 6 by 7. Okay. And so, anyways, but, I definitely think this connects to like BLM, treading America during the 42 months of Trump, during time. I mean, almost like pretty much from day one of Trump, they were protesting and rioting and stuff like that. Maybe even before that. Maybe while he was running, they were protesting and rioting. but definitely during the time of Trump, you know. And then the time times and half a time I think connects to the time of Biden. The time times and half a time is the what we see the woman in the wilderness with the two wings. The little horn on the fourth beast, along with the 10 horns, is wearing down the saints for time times and half a time, and shattering the power of the holy people. Um, and so I'm wondering if the time times and half a time. So when Biden became president, I thought maybe 3.5 months, but we're past that. Um, and so then, I saw this three Passover thing. And so I'm wondering if the time and times are the three Passovers. The half a time could also be translated dividing of time. Could be when God makes a division between his people and his enemies. But also that half a time frame is, or half a week is connected to the 3.5 days, where Revelation 11, the bodies, they look at the bodies through 3.5 days. Okay. So that's what I'm wondering with that. So we'll just have to wait and see. In Esther chapter 1, we see 180-day feast. Okay. Trump's peace deals, quote unquote, were actually 180 days. Okay, so from 813 was when he did the peace deal with the United Arab Emirates to okay, well, so that actually what happened was, so 813, if you go to February 8th, that's 108 days. And so what happened on February 9th was the start of Trump's impeachment trial. So kind of like God gave him 180 days to do these peace deals. And then the 7-day feast. Okay, what we saw in the 7-day feast is they were doing drinking without drinking is done without restraint. And so I definitely think that connects to Biden. Biden could be the 7th king on that statue, is what I got him, where he's at. And so I kind of think like 7s connect to Biden. 6s connect to Trump. 7s connect to Biden. 7 weeks from the start of Iran talks leads us to the third Passover. So that could be the 7-day feast. Okay. But a 7-day feast also connects to Passover. And then we saw that Queen Vashti would not come at the king's command on the 7th day. Okay, so the Jewish people during Sukkot, their 7th day is the day of final judgment. Okay, so what I'm wondering is during the time frame of Biden is like the final judgment of God. He's seeing what camp people are going to go to during the time of Biden. Okay, and then like I said, during this war, I also think was God, seeing how we're going to behave during this war. Are we going to pray for Israel, or are we going to support the Palestinians? Because there was actually, so during this war, they actually had people gathered in various cities around the world with Palestinian flags to support the Palestinians. So that's what happened. Okay. So it says, bring Queen Vashti with royal crown. Okay. Okay, but she refused to come with her crown. Okay, so remember I said the woman in Revelation has a crown and 12 stars. So Queen Vashti refused to come and pray for the 12 tribes of Israel. Okay. And in Revelation 3, we read, because you have kept the word of my perseverance, I will also keep you from the hour of testing, that hour that is about to come upon the whole world to test those who dwell on the earth. I am coming quickly. Hold fast what you have so that no one will take your crown. Okay, so there's an hour of testing. So what I wrote is the Israel-Hamas war was a time of testing. Okay, so we saw in Genesis 22 that God tested Abraham with Isaac. Okay, so Isaac was being brought up to this mountain to be sacrificed, and it was a test for Abraham. And then, and then what happens is an angel calls out and says, "Wait, stop, Abraham." And so then that could be a picture of Biden calling for the ceasefire. Okay, and then what happens is, then instead of Isaac being sacrificed, then a ram that's stuck with its two horns, which the ram could be a picture of America, the two horns can be a picture of Biden and Trump, and the ram ends up being sacrificed. Okay, but God recognizes that Abraham passes the test because he says, "Now I know that you fear God." Okay, so during this war, were we praying for the peace of Jerusalem? Okay, were we crying out to God? Okay, or were we protesting in the cities with Palestinian flags? And then, or like the squad calling on Biden to, I, I don't know what they were calling on him to do something pro-Palestinian. And then, but what's interesting is that the ceasefire in Israel also happened on Sivan 10. Okay, so if we're wrapping things up and we're like in the 7th month, okay, and I don't know, like, I mean, I think we're in the 6th month of Biden, so I'm not totally sure where the 7th starts counting from, but I see kind of, like, basically, anyways, basically, let's say Sivan is the 7th month, and so on Sivan 10 is, well, actually on the 10th of the month is when they're supposed to pick their lamb. Okay, so that was the ceasefire. Sivan 10 is May 21st. That was the ceasefire in Israel. Okay, and so kind of like what you could see is that instead of Isaac being sacrificed, then the lamb that gets picked is going to be this ram that shows up. Okay, and then what happens is, then the lamb gets killed on the 14th. Okay, and so Sivan 14 is the 25th. Okay, what's interesting too is that right before Passover, the Jewish people clean hametz or leavening out of their house. Okay, and so that's a prophetic picture of God is going to clean his house before the Passover of Messiah. Okay, and so I think that's going to be the Civil War is a way of God cleaning his house. Okay, and then let's see. The sons of Ephraim are archers equipped with bows, yet they turned back in the day of battle. Okay, they did not pray for Israel. America did not pray, or there would be this group of people that, even though they were equipped with bows, even though they had, armor, which would be, our prayers, they did not pray for Israel. They did not keep the covenant of God. They refused to walk in his law. Okay, 1 Samuel 17, it says, "And that all this assembly may know that the Lord does not deliver by sword or by spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands." Okay, so, we gotta recognize that the battle belongs to God, and so our weapons are praying to God. Okay. Okay, and so with Vashti, she had a lot of contempt and anger and caused a lot of contempt and anger. And so what we see is that would be the people, Vashti would be a picture of the people who hate God, America, and Israel. Okay. So, some other dates is, okay, so we saw President Trump, deal of the century, January 28th. 7 weeks after the deal of the century was the start of the coronavirus shutdown. 120 days after the deal of the century was the start of the rioting in America. So we see that 120 time frame in the story of Noah. And so actually, all these people were wondering who the Nephilim are. Okay, the Nephilim could connect to the BLM. Okay, um, that come on day 120. Okay, and then 190 days after the deal of the century was the explosion in Lebanon. Um, and so what I kind of say is that like the BLM is a picture of the lion's den, and on 8-4 was kind of the start of the fiery furnace. So what we kind of see in so actually what we see in the Torah is that God does his judgments, and then if people don't repent, he makes them 7 times harder. Okay, he increases his judgment by seven times. Okay, because what we saw in the fiery furnace is that the fiery furnace got made 7 times hotter. Okay, and so what we're seeing is that God's well, not God's people weren't repenting, and so God was making things harder. Okay, so we saw that with like the fire, like first we had the coronavirus shutdown, then the rioters came, then we had this fiery furnace type thing where fires were burning in the west, fires were burning in Israel, and then now that we're near the end of the birth pangs, we're kind of seeing the same thing again, because I saw like April 11th, I saw the rioting kind of revved up again. You know, things are, just getting 7 times hotter. Biden's returning to the Iran deal. He's taking all of America's money. He's affecting the economy, things like that. And then, so then I got Trump's 6 peace deals here. And then, so, and then I list again here about the 62 days, but I wanted to do kind of like a bookend thing. Okay. Because I think at the beginning of after the deal of the century, we had a 7-week time frame, 120 time frame, and 190 day time frame. And so then 7 weeks. Okay, so we're repeating that now. So 7 weeks after April 6th leads us to May 25th. Okay, so the Iran talks resumed on April 6th. So there's that 7-week time frame. There's I found 2 different 120 day time frames. 120 days after 9/15 led us to February 13th January 13th, which was when they did Trump's second impeachment vote. But also 120 days after January 7th, which was, kind of basically when Biden was voted in, brought us to 5/7, which was the start of Israel's tensions with Hamas. What was interesting about before 1/7 was 1/6 was the Capitol riot. So kind of like on 1/19, which would be like 9/11, was the Capitol riot. And then 190 days after Trump's first peace deal leads us to 2/18, which is when Biden resumed his talks with Iran on the JCPOA. Okay, so we're seeing things repeated here even at the end, okay, of these numbers. Okay, so I listed a bunch of key dates here. If you want, you could pause your video and take a look at them. One of the things I thought was kind of interesting is that on January 28th of last year, Trump had his deal of the century. This year, on January 28th, Biden overturned the deal of the century. I'm not quite sure how that works, but that's supposedly what happened. And then on 3/11 last year was when COVID was declared a pandemic. On 3/11 this year was when Biden signed his 1.9 trillion COVID relief bill. And then he also did a speech on that day where his COVID speech where he said, we could return to normal on July 4th. Kind of skipping over like key things like Easter and Shavuot and Pentecost and the Third Passover. Okay, because he's not a prophet. So, okay, but anyways, what we could see is when you kind of see all the things that Biden has been doing, it's like just a lot of sins all in a short amount of time. Returning the funds. He did a lot of overturning things that Trump did. Overturning the deal of the century, returning funds to the Palestinians. They had impeachment happen, in February. Biden restarted the JCPOA talks with Iran. He's spending all of America's money. And then we saw, 4/11/21 was, they had protests in Minneapolis after there was another shooting, I guess, that kind of revved up the protesting again on 4/11. On 4/13, Iran said they were going to do more nuclear processing, make even more nuclear material. On 4/18, U.S. and China said they were going to cooperate on the climate crisis, so Biden's making friends with our enemies. On 4/19, Biden called George Floyd's family. And then on that same day, there was a church fire in Minneapolis. I think it might have been started by protesters. I'll have to check on that. I'm not really sure. On 4/20, we saw Derek Chauvin was found guilty. What was interesting was that day was Hitler's birthday. So definitely kind of interesting. I think Derek Chauvin's also a type of Passover lamb. We also have 3, I didn't really make a list in my videos, but we also had 3 time frames where Jewish people got hurt. So first it started with the let's see, what did they call it? The Stampede on Lag on the 33rd, Omer 33, sorry, Omer 33, they had the Stampede. Then on so then, obviously Jewish people got hurt during the war with Hamas, and then on, was it on Shavuot? They actually had on Shavuot they actually had a in one of the synagogues in Israel, they had the bleachers fell down and some people got killed there too. So there we saw 3 time frames of Jewish people getting killed. So anyways, so like I said, so on 5/14 was the 73 years of Israel, which was 3 years after the embassy move. 5/21 was ceasefire in Israel. 5/21 also we saw 2 tropical storms forming on 5/21, and then 2 planes clipped in the Chicago airport. So I kind of think those are prophetic pictures of what's coming. Anti-Semitic attacks were going on 5/21. Clashes on the Temple Mount. So 5/25, some of the things I want to point out about that day is that if you take the date, the Gregorian date, you have 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 7 5s. Okay, so that's very interesting. If you take 2021 and add that together, it's a 5. It's 69 weeks after the deal of the century. It's 365 days after the riots started on 5/26. It's 12 months after the riot started, but then when you take the date 25 from the date, March 25th, you could come up with the Christmas date, like 12-month 525 day. Okay. It's also 9 months, 13 days from 813, Trump's first, second peace plan or whatever, UAE peace plan. It's the 13th day after no mask. It's the 36th month, 12th day since the embassy move. Okay, it's the 50th day after the start of the Iran talks on 4/6. So there's a connection to Pentecost, which Pentecost, the story of Pentecost in the book of Acts, is connected to the Tower of Babel in Genesis 11. There's similarities between those two stories. It's so 525 is 9th day after Shavuot. It's the 3rd day after the Christian Pentecost, which is today, the 23rd. And then it's 9 months, 22 days from the fiery furnace. So I was looking for like a 911 type number, but what we have is 922, which 22 is 11 plus 11. It's 18 weeks after Biden's inauguration, 88 days from Shushan Purim, and 5 months from Christmas. So another 5 there. So then the next date, so let's look at the next date on 5/26. It's 1 year by date from the start of the riots, because the riots actually started on May 26th. But, if you know how the calendar goes, the 1 year, the 365 days would be on the 25th. What's happening on the 26th is the blood moon, which is a total lunar eclipse, the largest supermoon. They're calling it the full flower moon. It's the first since 2019, so we haven't had lunar eclipses, I think, since 2019. I think it's been a while. And then what's interesting, it's happening at 11:11 UTC time, which works out to 5:11 a.m. in Denver time, Mountain time. And then what we have coming up too is Memorial Day on 5/31. 6/1 is the 70th week, like I said, after the deal of the century. 6/10, there's a partial solar eclipse. A ring of fire happening on 6/10. So, if nothing happens on 5/25, it doesn't mean it's not a significant date. It could be the start of the third Passover, but we might not see anything happen until, so what, the 7th day is going to be June 1st, and then, the 8th day is June 22nd, so that's another possible watch date, because the 8th day is when people get cut off. And then the 9th day would be June 3rd, which is Saban 23, which connects to Esther 8:9, which is when the king's scribes were called. So that's a possible fulfillment, So if nothing happens, don't think, it didn't work, but just keep in mind that maybe things aren't going to happen until the end of the week instead of the beginning of the week. I'm just not really sure how it works out. So I just gotta say that, because we know in part and we prophesy in part, and we won't know until we actually see things happening. But there is, with May 24th is, May 24th is going to be the 8th day of Shavuot, and so I talked about how the 8th day is connected to circumcision. So maybe even on May 24th, we might see something happen. I'm not sure. But because that 24 number is kind of interesting, because, that's when Daniel, on the 24th, he has kind of a Messianic encounter on the 24th. Although I think his Messianic encounter at first starts out to be a false one at first, before the true encounter. So what's possible is it's possible that we might just see Trump say something on Monday, okay, and then civil war starts on Tuesday. Okay, I'm not really sure. We'll just have to wait and see. So that's a possibility, or things start the night of the 24th. Because, I mean, the other thing too is that it's Sivan 13 on the 24th, and then it's Sivan 14th on the 25th. And we see in the book of Esther, there's actually fighting in the provinces. How does that work? They fight for 2 days. Oh, but actually, what I did figure out is that I think the fighting, like, first they have fighting in, like on the 13th and the 14th, they have fighting in Susa, and then they rest on the 15th. I think that actually connects to the ceasefire, because the 13th day of the war was May 19th. I have the war starting on May 7th. Okay. That connects to Revelation 12:7 when there's war in heaven. Okay. So the 13th day they fought because Netanyahu wanted to fight for 2 more days. Okay, so they fought for 2 days on the 13th and the 14th, and then they did a ceasefire on the 21st, which would be the 15th day. So they rested on the 15th day. Okay, so that's what I think happens. And then it talks about the fighting in the provinces, and more people, this is in the book of Esther, more people, it's like 75,000 people die in the provinces, in the fighting in the provinces. And so that could connect to the Civil War in America. And I think that happens on the 14th, and I forget the time frame of that. But anyways, that connects to the Civil War. So here's the picture I've been showing for a while. The militant on the right, the militant on the left, the sea of Trump, the sea of Obama. As the sea splits, the hidden world came to light. And so, we're going to be in the middle with Messiah. There's no lies. We're hidden right now because we're like in slavery. Okay. But we're going to, God's going to bring us out. We're going to be the leaders. He's going to do a reversal of fortune, basically. Psalm 18 says he drew me out of many waters. Okay, so I know that's a lot of information, but I wanted to get it out here in case, I just don't really know for sure, but just in case, May 25th ends up being the day, we want to see why on the calendar that would be significant. But like I said, it could, if it's not the day, then it's the start of a week that at the end of that week could be the day that we see Messiah show up. And so anyways, but I wanted you to see why the third Passover is significant. Okay. Just all the prophetic stuff going on. So hang in there. We're so close to, look up for your redemption draws nigh. If civil war starts in America, just hang tight. Jesus will come and set you free. I don't know if Jesus comes when the war starts or, if there's kind of a lag. And so, just hang in there. Okay. Don't go out and fight. Stay home, and stand by and see the salvation of the Lord. And also too, today is Pentecost on the 23rd, and I said be ready for the third day, because, the 25th is like the third day after Pentecost. It would be the third day from now. And so maybe possibly this is the message that God's having me bring to you, is be ready for the third day. Okay. Maybe do your laundry tomorrow and be ready for the 25th. I don't know. So, anyway, so that's what I'm wondering. So hopefully this was helpful to you. I appreciate you listening. So hang in there. Look up for your redemption draws nigh. Jesus is right at the door. He is so near. So hang in there. And just, during hard times, call out to God for his grace and endurance. So thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you. God bless.